Hi, this is Chris at Clever Unicorn Games and the Unicorn Collective, back with another one of our interviews. Today, I have new designer Grant Lyon with me. How are you doing today?
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. This is fun.
It is, and we've had a nice chat beforehand as well, and you are a funny guy. Your
We are
videos,
fast friends already. We've been
best
virtually holding hands,
best
it's
friends,
been
yeah?
great.
Best friends,
Yeah,
best friends.
obviously.
Never leave
Yeah,
me. Never leave
uh,
me. No.
I
Did it
won't.
get weird?
Oh, yeah, not at all. I've been stroking your goatee in my mind, you
Oh, and I've
know?
been twirling your mustache in mine. Oh.
Hey, look at us. Just two peas in a pod.
Um, let's do some questions. Question number one,
Right.
Mr. Lyon.
I'm ready. Hit me with
I'm going
it.
to Parkinson this.
All right.
What is it you like to do when you are not designing games and playing games?
Well,
When you're not playing games as well, has to be something else.
okay. Obviously, my first love is performing and writing jokes. I am a comedian, and that's been my life's work. I did stand up for the first time when I was 20 years old, and it just clicked. And it was like, oh, this is what I want to do forever. And I love, not only do I love performing, but I also love writing jokes because every joke is a puzzle. It's you'd be surprised at how much you're like, oh, if I just switch these two words in order, or if I just say it slightly different here, it can make all the difference in the world. And I love figuring out the puzzle of a joke, which is funny because I don't love puzzly games. I'm not a puzzle game. I don't like puzzles at all. And like a game like Carcassonne where people love Carcassonne, I'm like, yeah, it's okay. It's like a puzzle. It's like a puzzle, and I don't really care about puzzles. You know,
Would you say you'd
so
rather, because you've done some acting work as well, would you rather hit it big as a stand-up or as an actor, do you think?
stand up for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, acting to me is a means to an end. I act so that people care about my stand up. I don't really like it's you know, for me I want to be in I don't really care about being in movies and television. I care about people coming to see my stand up because they've seen me in a movie or a television. That's all just I want to be able to do stand up on my terms where I come in to a city, I do a theater for 1,500 people, and there are people there that want to see me perform and like what I do. That's the goal.
Yeah. I can
That's the dream.
understand that because I love making people laugh. I don't really do it on stage. I was on a pantomime once, but yeah, I just like, if I'm sat with friends and stuff, I like being the guy that makes other people laugh. It kind of makes me feel good. It's kind of selfish, really, isn't it, though? Well,
Well, I mean, in the end, that is true. It's like I do stand up because I enjoy doing stand up. I also love the benefit of that I'm helping other people who've had a bad day. But in the end, I do it because I like the way it makes me feel, you know? But, what's that quote where it's like if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, if you're doing that and putting that into the world, then it can only be good, you know?
is that a quote?
So that was a real bad paraphrase.
Yeah.
It's a real bad paraphrase. It's probably absolutely nothing like. What's the quote I tell myself? You
I un
know?
I understand what you said, and that's all that matters.
Yeah,
There we go.
exactly.
So what is it
Oh.
that inspired you to make a board game?
You know, I got some advice when I was early on in my like comedy career, and the advice was the hardest thing for people to do in the entertainment business is walk through the doors that open to them when they aren't the doors they expected to open. And so I've always loved board games. I was a Magic the Gathering player when I was a kid, and I did a lot of that and even played a few tournaments when I was like 12, 13, 14. And then I got to high school and I kind of, got into other things and hadn't played any games in a long time. And, like 6 years ago, I got back into like the modern board gaming because my buddy having game nights. It was all comedians, and he was like, "Hey, I'm doing game nights for comedians," and it was so fun.
Oh, I want to be there.
And
I want to be at one of those.
oh yeah, I mean, it's great. It's great. The only like the my buddy Shay Moss. The funniest part of them was he would get so mad trying to explain the rules to a game because everybody would just be doing jokes and stuff. And he'd be like, shut up. Everybody shut up and just let me explain the rules. I get it. You're all funny. You all have jokes, okay? But shut up so I can explain the rules of this game. Uh, and so, that was me getting like back into modern board gaming. And I have a buddy that I've met through film festivals and things like that, whose day job is doing art for video games and board games. He
Oh,
does a
okay.
lot of art for that sort of stuff, and has published multiple games that have been decently successful. And he approached me and was like, "Hey, are you interested in helping me design a board game? I have a few ideas. The things that I've done so far have been like sort of family strategy, lightweight strategy family games, but I'm interested in doing like a funny party game, and I think you're funny. Would you be interested in working on this?" And it was something that I hadn't really even thought about. I liked games, but I wasn't like, "Oh," but that was the example of that, like, a door that opens to you. Maybe it's not the door that you thought was going to open, but I was like, yeah, I like board games. You know about this world a lot more than I do. So it would make sense for my first one to like work with you on it. Sure, let's do it. And so, like, we just sat down and started like throwing out ideas for games and kind of came across one that both of us were like, yeah, that's a good idea. That's something that we'd work on, you know?
Where did you go
So
from? So you both came up with that idea, where did you go from first with it? Did he hold your hand and take you through the process, or did you kind of take, your own initiative and just start working away on a
I
on a concept yourself?
I think, we started meeting like every week and just really going through like, okay, how does this game work? How do we play it? And I think one of the things that made it a successful partnership is we both were bringing different skills to it, right? He has a lot more experience with strategy and mechanics and gameplay and that sort of stuff, and I have a lot of experience of like what's fun and funny, right? And like, how do we accentuate those aspects and how do we just make it a good experience for people, right? That's my whole life has been about just like, how do we create good experiences, right? And so, us coming at it from that different way, I think really became like a good marriage. And, there's a lot of ideas in the game that are his, a lot of ideas that are mine. And at this point, I couldn't even tell you who threw in what, right? It just all kind of became, and there were plenty of times where he'd be like, "Oh, we need something like this," and then I'd be like, "Okay, what about this?" And then he'd be like, "What about this?" And then you just sort of build on top of each other. And you know, most of the game was sort of written by me, all of the graphic design and all that stuff, all him, right? So, again, we're coming at it with like different talents. I've been a writer for a long time. And, there were times that he needed to like temper my expectations and make things realistic, as someone that has done it before. Legitimately, after our first playtest, I was like ready to cry. Where I was like, we've put months into this and it sucks. It's horrible. It's horrible. What are we doing? I'm done. I quit. And he was like, no, no, no. Like this was our very first play test. We figured out a lot of the stuff that doesn't work.
There's going to
That's
be
what you
another
do.
hun. There's going to
Um,
be another 100 of these.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that was something I didn't know. I mean, I like legitimately, like in the first play test, I was sitting there like, this is not fun. This is not fun. Like we had all these theory sessions where it was like, okay, we think this will work, and then you see it in practice, and you're like, oh no, none of this works.
It's funny though,
And
because you recognize that yourself. Because there's sometimes where you think, and I've done it myself, where I've made a concept for a game, written it down, made out a little prototype with cards and stuff, and I thought, wow, this is great. Then I've put it in a box, taken it to a gaming group or taken it to my friends. We've started playing it, and then somebody else has gone, "This is rubbish. This is no fun."
Yeah,
And that kind of hits you pretty hard.
yeah,
But it's good that you realised yourself,
boy.
yeah, that's
Oh, I mean, half of my job as a comedian is reading a room, and when people are just like looking at cards and nobody's laughing, and this is supposed to be a fun party game, I'm like, boy, that's not what I'm going for,
yeah.
you know. I mean, if it hadn't have been for my co-designer Adam, I don't think we would have made it to the finish line because I would have given up real quick. And then, him talking through like, okay, no, this is just the process, and now we need to figure out like what did work and what didn't work. And it's okay that after that first playtest, there's more that didn't work than did work. And we just start ways. And that first playtest was very helpful to me in the sense that again my cohort Adam has done a lot of more strategic games. They're
Yep.
light strategic games, but they're strategic games. And after that first playtest, my sort of modus operandi was just like simplify, simplify, simplify. How do we just find the core of what's fun about this game? And it's like in that first playtest, it's like we had like, okay, you got to do this to unlock this, and then doing that will allow you to do this, and then you got to add these points and subtract these, and there's these and it was just like it doesn't need all that, right? It doesn't need all that, and so just how do we figure out what is the most fun of this, and then highlight that and make that the core of the game, you know?
That's a
So
brilliant answer.
yeah.
Let's go on to another question. Here's one that always throws people. What is your number one favorite game?
I was actually just talking about this with my friends because people ask this question a lot, and I don't have a good answer, which you're saying is a lot of people. I mean, sure, I can tell you if gun to my head, maybe my favorite game of all time is Bang Dice because that's a game that all of my friends love to play. And that answer right there is a perfect like answer for I answer that that's the game that's my favorite because it's the game my friends like to play the most.
Yep.
And that's honestly true. It's like, I don't know what is my favorite because I love being a game facilitator.
Yep.
I love bringing games and seeing other people get joy out of that. Like that's my favorite part of it is that playing a game with someone who maybe doesn't play a ton of games and they go, "Oh, this is super fun." And I'm like, "Yeah, right there, that's the drug, right? That's what's getting me into it." And so I like having I love games like Champions of Midgard is a one of my favorite games where I'm like there's a lot of thinking. It's not wildly heavy, but
Yep.
there's still like a decent amount of strategy and thought and time that goes into that. But I also, really like having some games like code names where just
Yep.
anybody can play code names and it's like I don't know that I've ever played Codenames with someone who didn't enjoy it. Whether they may have never played a game before in their life, and so it's like I like having stuff like that too, where it's just easy. It's like there's a new party game that I really like called By Felicia, right? Where it's like that's a game I can bring out when people are like drunk and not paying attention, and they'll still all really like that game. You know,
Yep.
like I like having those different things. It's like my buddy Josh wants like strategy games, so I'm like, okay, well, let's play Isle of Cats, let's play Champions of Midgard, let's play like. But then I also have other friends where I'm like, look, we can't play anything that has any strategy to it at all. It's just party games. But I'm okay with that. Like
Yep.
I like having the different things for the different people.
Have you played Zombie Dice?
I have not played Zombie Dice. No,
You'll
that's
love
one I
that.
gotta look up.
No, you got to
Yeah.
look that. It's been around for a long time. It's one of the earliest
Okay.
like push your luck dice rolling games, but
Yeah.
it's so much fun if you get a bunch of people. It's it's small, so it just comes in a little tube. All there is 13 dice and a rule book, and it is hilarious.
Okay.
It's hilarious, yeah. Because
Oh,
you
nice.
mentioned Bang. It's like a more simplified version of Bang, but
Okay.
it's really good. Um,
Yeah. And Bang, like why I say like that would be up there for me is it's like it's a highly social
yeah,
game. It's a great game for hanging out with your friends. There's, not zero thought that goes
yeah.
into it, right? There's still some strategy and things like that. And I just like that social aspect of it.
And even
You know?
non-gamers like rolling dice. Everybody
Exactly.
likes rolling dice.
You know? And a lot of the people I'm playing with are other comedians, not big gamers, right? Like I am probably, at least in the top echelon of gamers in my group, right?
Yeah,
There's like a couple other people, but mostly they're more casual than even I am.
yeah.
So, you
It
know,
sounds like a fun place to play party games though. It's like it's
oh, for
I'm the
sure.
same with party games in that if it's the right people, then I love them. Absolutely love
Yeah,
them.
totally.
But if you get those same party games and go and play it with my friends at like strategic games,
Yeah.
it's not that much fun. They don't really
No,
get into it. It's not enough for
not
them,
into
and you don't
yeah,
have the
you
same
need to
laughs,
be
you
in
know?
the spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to be able to be in the spirit of it. You can't take yourself that seriously with them, you
Um,
know?
in your process of designing and now taking Curmudgeon all the way to market, have you hit a barrier or a hurdle which has stopped you? Um, Apart from giving up nearly on your first playtest, has there been another part of the process that has made you stop and really confused you? And then how did you overcome it?
Well, I think the pitching to publishers
Mm,
is an easy place to give up. Um, we decided, right? Like there are two schools of thought. Either you publish it yourself, you go through Kickstarter, you do all that sort of stuff, or you pitch it to a publisher and maybe you make less money, but the game gets to market and they bring all of their contacts and all of their, um, the game's more likely to be successful. You're less likely to make it rich,
yeah,
if you go through a publisher. But we talked early on about like, well, how do you want to do this? And I'm of the opinion that I would rather take it to a publisher because in the end, my career as a comedian, I'm not going to stop that. And if you publish your own game, it really becomes a full time job. I mean, that is your job. And so I wasn't ready to do that. And I don't think that there is a better one or a right or wrong one. It just you need to decide what you want. My when I was trying to decide, another piece of advice I got, my uncle said to me, um, what think about the worst case scenario for either decision, which one would make you more upset, and then do the other one. So, like, would it make me more upset if I spent years and years trying to self-publish something and it never got off the ground? Or would it make me more upset if I gave it to a publisher, the game got wildly successful, and I wasn't rich because of it? Well, it would make me more upset to spend all of this time and not have it to market than it would to have a game out there where I only got a few percentages of it. And so I was like, well, then that makes more sense for me to go with that one if that's where my rage factor is. And so, your question, my long-winded answer to your question of like hurdles, was I did not know how hard it would be to get a publisher on board.
mm,
We pitched it to, I don't know, 75 publishers or something
wow.
like that. It was at least 50. I don't know the exact number, but it was at least 50. And so, and there were a lot of maybes in there. There were a lot of people that asked for prototypes and then play tested it on their own and stuff like that. So it was encouraging enough that, we were like, okay, this is not terrible, right? People are asking for prototypes, people are getting the fun of it. but that almost made it more frustrating where it was just like I feel like we keep getting so close. We keep having people ask for prototypes. We've had follow-up meetings with multiple companies, and then ultimately they pass. What does it take to get somebody to like say yes, right? Like there was a time in there where I just was like, man, screw this. Like I just want to walk away, right? I'm tired of hearing no. But you only need one yes, right? You only need one yes. And and then half of the like the way we found a publisher wasn't even in the traditional sort of way. We had pitched our game is being published by 25th Century Games,
Yep.
who has Kingwood and Jurassic Parts and Space Explorers and Winner Chicken Dinner, and it's definitely a smaller publisher, but also like a publisher that's growing a lot and is making a lot of good things. And I feel very grateful to be with them because they are producing quality products and good games.
How did you find
And
them?
so we pitched it to them at Origins in 2019, and they liked it a decent amount. They asked for a prototype. We gave them the prototype. We sent them the prototype. They had enjoyed playing it, but weren't pulling the trigger at all. Just sort of similar experiences to a lot of other people. And we ran into Chad at Gen Con, like at a bar, legitimately at a bar. We ran into him, and he was like, "I've play tested your game a couple of times. It's fun. Do you have it here? Let's play it right now. Let's play it right now." And he had a couple other game designers and industry people with him, and we sat down at a bar at like midnight and played the game and just had a ton of laughs and a
Yep.
great time. And that was the time where he was like, "Oh, I'm like, oh, it clicked.
Yep.
It clicked for me here, right? Because that's this game. This is not a heavy strategy game. This is like a have a beer and have a
Yep.
great time with your friends
Right
game.
place, right time. That's exactly.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent.
And so then after that, he was like, "I want to publish this game," and we were like, we love the games that you're doing. We'd love to work with you." You know. So yeah, it just takes that sort of like perseverance, right?
Yep.
It's just like that old saying like opportunity meets preparedness. I really like to paraphrase a lot of quotes. I don't know what it
I'm
is.
writing all of these down because I'm going to use them in
Yeah,
conversation tomorrow, just in random
exactly.
conversation when the postman comes round and stuff.
Yeah.
um, have you ever played a game that you really didn't like? Now, you don't have to name the game, but what was the mechanic or the theme or what was it that just put you off that game?
Yeah, I have played some games. I think the big thing is like when a game is attempting to be funny and it's just not funny. You know, to me, shock value is not funny. If you I'm not saying that shocking things can't be funny, but it can't just be shock. Like there has to be a joke behind it. And because of the success of Cards Against Humanity, there have been so many other games that are like we're just going for shock value, and quite honestly, it's just, especially as a comedian, it's not funny. It's also like I'm just doing the thing that the card says. I have no agency over it. There's no opportunity for creativity. It's boring. It's boring, you know?
I agree with you 100%. And and I always bring up this comparison as well. Cards Against Humanity and Joking Hazard. Did you ever play Joking Hazard, which is a
No,
cyanide and
I've heard it
happiness?
good, though.
That's
I've
the
heard
thing.
that
It
people.
doesn't do a lot different to Cards Against Humanity in theory. It's another. There are some shocking cards in there. The difference is that you're making a comic strip. So you're being creative in that you're making or trying to
Yeah,
make a coherent story. So it takes that kind of edginess that Cards Against Humanity has, which I'm not a big fan of. I played it once. I didn't like myself for some of the stuff that came out, and that kind of put me off it. And then
Totally.
that was me done. But with Joking
Yeah,
Hazard, there's a few in there, but you could actually, with Joking Hazard, the thing is you could take out the worst cards, and it would just leave you with a bunch of dick and fart jokes, which, that's me.
yeah,
That's my comedy. I love that stuff. So, you know, so yeah.
yeah.
But that game, just the fact that you're making a story, you're making a comic strip as you go along, and you're trying to come up with the funniest punchline. It's a lot of fun, and I would play it. I've got it because I've kickstarted that, and it is very very good. But there you go. There's one.
There was a game. Yeah, there was a game that came out in 2015 called Word Whimsy. Cryptozoic made it, and I don't think it's in print anymore. But that was a game that, like, to me was like, oh, this is so much better than Cards Against Humanity because Word Whimsy was you had a prompt like a Cards Against Humanity, but then you got your choice of putting as many different cards together as you want and put them in your little sleeve and hand them over. You could hand in a single card if that was what was appropriate for that joke. You could have 5 cards that all get read together. And and it made the answers focus on the silly absurdity rather than the shock of it. And to me, that's just way more fun. And it also allowed for a bit more creativity because I got to decide how many cards and what my answer was and that sort of stuff. You know?
Yep.
Yeah.
No, that does sound a lot better. I'm gonna have to look into that. But if you say it's out of print, I might be out of
Yeah,
luck.
I don't I'm sure you can find a used copy out there. It was a game that I really liked, and I just don't know. Maybe it came out too close to like Cards Against Humanity, and so it just kind of got lost in the shuffle or whatever. But like, it's a game my family really likes to play. I mean, we still have a copy of Word Whimsy, and it's all beat up and stuff at this point. But that's a game that like I could play with my family, and it makes people laugh just as much as a Cards Against Humanity would. I mean, it makes me laugh way more because I'm not like, ugh, that's like a little much. Like it's all
Yeah.
just silly, right? You
What's
know?
what's even worse though, and I've never seen this, but I have heard of it, is when you get those people that do fill in the blank cards in Cards Against Humanity and try and make
Yeah,
things even worse than what's in the box. So yeah,
yeah,
I'm always wary if somebody says, "Do you want to play this?" I'm like, "No, no, that's all right. I'll pass on that."
yeah.
Not to say, I mean, there are people out
Well,
there that really enjoy it and it's really popular, but not for me.
totally. And I also think, I mean, it's not a game that's aging well, right? Like um, as a society and a people become more sensitive to um, different diverse groups and stuff like that, it's
Yeah,
not a game that's aging well,
yeah.
and
It's
I
not.
think
It,
appropriately so,
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
rightfully so.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. What would be one piece of advice that you would give to a new designer coming into the business? What would be something that you've learned that you would like to pass on to that person?
Listen to other people and get play testers together that like games and listen to their ideas. There are certainly ideas in my game that didn't come from me or the guy that I created it with. And I think a lot of people with anything creativity are proud. They're like, no, this is mine. This is my idea. And it's like you're doing yourself a disservice. If you are not taking the advice and the ideas from other talented people, you're doing yourself a disservice because I don't care where an idea comes from as long as it makes the thing better, right?
Yep,
If that's your focus, if your focus on is on how can I make the best game possible, then you're going to take suggestions from other people and don't be too proud to do that.
that's brilliant. That's brilliant
Yeah.
advice. Thank you so much for coming and speaking to me today, Grant. This was
Yeah.
brilliant and funny
Thank you
and
very much.
excellent.
Appreciate it.
I'm not going to
Yeah,
say
yeah.
I don't want to upset the other 49 by saying this was my favorite, but
But we know in
we
your heart.
secretly,
Yeah.
secretly, without
Yeah.
saying it, we know. We know.
Yeah.